Hello, and thank you for joining me on the show today. This is the Now Talks, a collection of inspiring personal stories and leadership lessons from some of the world's most iconic leaders. It is the weekly podcast for women in leadership, brought to you by Nations of Women. My name is Dr. Tina Alton, and I'm your host for today and the coming weeks. Wow, wow, wow. What an exciting and exhilarating and phenomenal summit we had this year, 2025. And that was the culmination of our Momentum Blueprint series and just really helping leaders in our community to build momentum, not just for this year, but the years and the days ahead. So now we are in a new series called The Leadership Edge. And in this episode, we're going to really hopefully explore and have a conversation about how are you as a leader building influence that lasts. The truth is, leadership is not about titles. It's really all about influence. And not all influence is equal because I think we're all very much aware that some influence is very shallow. Sometimes it fades when, people stop clapping for you. But then what about lasting influence? That is the kind that truly transforms families, organizations, and nations at large. So, lasting influence is what you want as a leader. And so, today we're going to be unpacking how to build influence that doesn't disappear when, the spotlight moves on, right? Let me say that again. Lasting influence is what you want as a leader. You don't want your influence to disappear the moment you're out of sight, out of mind. So as always, we take a look at the definition of the keyword we're exploring. And so if we look at the Oxford Dictionary, it defines influence as the capacity to have an effect on the character, development, or behavior of someone or something. So therefore, it means that being popular is not influence because you're not having any effect necessarily on character development or behavior of someone or something. Popularity, too, though, is fragile and it's not built on attention. Control is not influence either, because when you're controlling as a leader, yes, it can breed some compliance. It can, force people to perhaps agree with you even, but it doesn't bring change. And often it can lead to frustration, um, and just even anger, if you will, and resentment as well when you're a leader who is very much controlling others. So, real influence, therefore, shapes values, not just behavior. It can shape an entire culture, values that people hold for families, communities, nations. You can have a whole list of ways in which you can influence people specifically in the area of their values. So, lasting influence, therefore, means that, for example, when people still refer to you, perhaps once you've left the room, when your example outlives your presence, and most importantly, when you multiply other leaders, not necessarily just gathering followers. So maybe you can think of a teacher, a mentor, or perhaps even your parents, somebody who influenced you years ago. Are you still being shaped by perhaps what they instilled in you? That's a thought. And one of the things we did look at during our summit was really looking at, how you build influences leaders, how you grow, how you build momentum. And we identified the fact that you cannot build momentum or influence or be a great leader all by yourself. There would have been many people involved, people that helped you, but perhaps didn't even know they helped you. Maybe you read a book and that changed your thinking, changed your life. people that helped you, but you never told them, and those that were intentional about investing in your growth. So when you think about that, that's how you know, wow, that is a great leader. That's a real leader. That person influenced me. So again, I ask you, can you think of a teacher, a mentor, a parent, a friend who influenced you years ago? And are you still being shaped by what they instilled in you? Now, when we think about building influence as a leader, right? Again, I talked about the title in this new series is Building Influence That Lasts. And so when we look even in the Bible, in Matthew 5, 14, 15, 16, talks about being the light of the world, being a city that cannot be hidden, letting our light shine before others so that they may see our good works. And what happens when they see our good works? That they would actually, give glory to God, our Father who is in heaven. So therefore, in my opinion, and as a woman of faith, I've come to believe very much so the true influence, true influence is the one that points people to God, not pointing people to us, ourselves. Like, look at me, look what I've done. Real, true, genuine influence points other people to God. And also the fact that the strength of the light that we carry is not just in how bright perhaps it was, once upon a time, but it's how steady is the light that we carry, shining over time for others. Shining before others, are we being consistent in how we let our light shine? Right? If you think about Moses, Abraham, Deborah, Paul, Peter, so many others, the influence still continues to echo through generations. So here's a thought for you to reflect on. Ask yourself, as a leader, is my influence temporary? Perhaps maybe inspiration temporarily? Or is it actually, am I actually building a spiritual legacy of some sort? Am I pointing people to God? Am I letting my light shine before others? Am I being the light of the world? Am I being like a city set on a hill that cannot be hidden? Right? Reflect on those things. And one of my mentors, John C. Maxwell, defines leadership as influence. And he says it's nothing more and it's nothing less. But here's the nuance though. Influence without integrity is nothing but manipulation. Let me say that again. If you're a leader who doesn't have integrity, you might have all the influence you want or can get and have. But if you don't have integrity, then it's simply nothing but manipulation. And a leader with influence but without consistency is unstable. It's instability. And a leader with influence without multiplying your influence, without multiplying, other leaders to come along with you or come after you. When there is no multiplication, then it's simply selfishness. Now, here was staggering statistics that I came by from Deloitte in 2023, the Human Capital Report. It showed that 72% of employees believe their leaders' character and consistency have more long-term impact on their technical skills. That therefore means that um, what sustains influence is not simply being brilliant or your brilliance, but actually your credibility. A great example is what we do here in Nations of Women. Like our summit is not just an event, it's not just gathering for the sake of gathering, but it's one of the key ways in which we multiply our influence by raising other women leaders who will now be shaping nations, their communities, their families. Because guess what? When they come, their life is completely transformed, and they come one way and they leave another way, not the same way they came. So let me give you a number of signs that hopefully will help you to recognize whether your influence will last or not. People only follow you when you're physically present. Do people follow you when you're not there? Perhaps maybe they follow your culture, things that you say, your thought process. I don't know. You ask yourself that question. Does your leadership rely on pressure instead of trust? Right? As a leader, are you building trust or are you simply putting pressure on other people? You build followers who need you, not necessarily leaders who would outgrow you. And I know sometimes it can be scary when invest in other people and they grow and, what do you call it? They outgrow you or they even become bigger than you. That is phenomenal. That's great. That's good fruit. Because you don't want to grow leaders. You don't want to invest in other people who would be lesser than you. Even think of it as parents. What do we want? We want our kids to be better than us, to do greater things than us. That's what leadership is about. Another sign that your leadership and your influence will last is when your words and actions don't necessarily match up. Now, yes, I know, we all make mistakes. We all drop balls sometimes. I've done it myself. But the good news is that when you realize you've dropped a ball, then you have to be humble enough to go back and put it right. Make good your word. Another sign is, think of it this way: if you're no longer in that role or no longer have that title, will your respect be gone? That is a good sign that your influence will not last. Or perhaps maybe you're serving a leader who is, giving you titles and all of those things, but the moment you're no longer in that role, there's no more respect for you, then that leader didn't really, they were just using you, to put it bluntly. They were not interested in helping you to grow your influence. They were just bluntly using you. And you don't want to be that kind of leader either. So some example, perhaps a leader who's really focused on growing profits, but actually neglecting the people that are working with them. So when they leave, when that leader leaves, if their sole focus was on profit, 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 guess what? Whatever culture they built collapses because it was never going to be sustainable. Same as parents. What values are we teaching our children? Are we just saying, things and not necessarily living up to what we're saying? In which case it will show because your children will push back. What about leaders who, like, wow, that's an incredible leader, but then completely bent out? It's not sustainable if you're leading for performance rather than actually leading for transformation and impact. Now, that's one of my all-time leaders. Think about Nelson Mandela, who's in prison 27 years, and yet his commitment to reconciliation is still guiding not just the nation as Zania, South Africa, but that we all make references to that, right? We'll make references to the importance of reconciliation, importance of forgiveness, importance of not being bitter, letting go of the offenses and the hurts that people, push out to us, right? That is a sign of a great leader. Because although he's no longer here, we refer to that. We use that as a measuring yardstick as to why we must forgive, Why there must be reconciliation between two tribes, people groups, perhaps. So, some questions for you to reflect on. Question number one. It's in no particular order, but write these down. If you're not sitting down and you're perhaps maybe on the go, grab a pen and paper or grab your phone, on the notes and write these questions down. Ask yourself, does your influence depend on your presence or is it actually multiplying in your absence? Question number two, who is actively being developed under your leadership right now? Are you developing anybody else? Question number three, 10 years from now, or maybe 5 years, or maybe even 2 years from now, what will people remember most about your leadership? Now, I know these are tough questions, but they're very, very important that as leaders, we're able to sit down and ask ourselves some of these tough questions. That helps us to reflect and perhaps adapt and readjust so that we can be better leaders. So, some challenge, I'm going to give you 4 challenges for this week. One, invest in someone else's growth, not just with words, but actually being intentional with your time. Why? Because your time is the greatest gift you can ever give to anybody else. Number two, do an audit on your legacy. That means find 2 or 3 people that you trust and ask them, what impact did you consistently leave behind? And be willing to listen because sometimes we ask questions, but we don't actually want to listen to the answer because sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's painful to hear the truth. But you know what? The truth will always set you free. The truth will always, always, always help you to be a better leader. So audit your legacy. Challenge number three, be intentional about aligning your words and your actions. So pick one thing as a leader that you're not consistent about and fix it immediately. Number four, multiplication focus. This week, delegate, delete, delegate, delete, delegate, delete, and do. Empower others instead of holding on. So delegate, 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 delete, 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 and do. Okay? Some practical tools for us because, at Nations of Women, every week on our podcast, we like to leave you with some practical tools that you can literally go and apply. But the truth is, it does not work. You will not get any results or see any change if you do nothing with it. It only works if you write it down and if you're committed to it and you actually apply it. So here we go. One, legacy mapping. I mean, I've given some titles to some of this is map your legacy. What do I mean by that, you ask? Well, what I mean is write down what you want your leadership to be remembered for. Are your daily actions aligned to this? Your mentorship rhythm. What do I mean by that? I mean schedule recurring time to develop at least one person intentionally. Have a brilliant feedback system. What do I mean by that? I mean create a way, even if it's anonymous, a way for people to be able to tell you how your leadership is impacting them. You've got to know, you've got to know, you've got to know. Feedback is got to be your greatest friend as a leader. So have a way to let other people know, other people tell you how is your leadership impacting them. And consistency practice. What I mean is keep a weekly self-audit. At the end of each week or at the beginning of each week or middle of each week, it doesn't matter. But at least weekly, ask yourself this question. Did I live out my values this week? And if you can't answer yes, you know what to do. So some things to remember, some key things to remember. One by my mentor, John C. Maxwell. He says, leadership is influence. It's nothing more and nothing less. Popularity would fade, but it's a legacy that would remain. And your true influence is measured by who comes after you, who else is rising after you. And consistency, not your charisma, is what sustains influence. And some final food for thought. You don't want influence that trends or just to be trendy for the sake of, oh, you know what, I'm. No, no, no. You want real influence that transforms other people. And your measure as a leader is not the size of the crowd who's following you today, but it's by the strength of the legacy that you leave tomorrow. And lasting influence is built day by day, choice by choice, decision by decision, action by action, one person after another. Let me say that again. Lasting influence is built day by day, choice by choice, decision by decision, action by action, habit by habit, person by person, and so much more. So this week, don't chase visibility. Don't chase being visible. Don't chase. Instead, focus your heart on building real legacy. Mentor somebody else. Align your words and your actions. Let yourself be a leader whose words and actions are matching up. Focus on multiplying leaders, not just gathering people to follow you. And finally, if this episode has stretched you or giving you some great food for thought, then why don't you share with somebody else? Maybe you might say, hey, you know what, Tina, I'm good. I don't need any of this. Well, good for you. Why don't you share with somebody that you think or you believe needs to be reminded what leadership and influence is all about? Join us at Nations of Women, where women leaders are building influence that will last for generations to come. Until next week, remember to stay faithful, stay focused, and stay bold. God bless. And that's all for this week. You've been listening to Dr. Tina Alton with the Now Talks, the weekly podcast for women in leadership, brought to you by Nations of Women. All that remains is for me to say have a fantastic week, stay safe, and reach out if you need any help now at nationsofwomen.com. Until next time, enjoy the pursuit of your potential, and remember, now is your time.